And welcome to the second snow survey of 2025 with the California Department of Water Resources. If you are just joining us, the snow survey team has just gotten underway and are beginning their first measurements where, if you can see, we are snowing up here at Phillips Station. So this location is just one of more than 260 snow courses that are manually measured throughout the state through the California Cooperative Snow Surveys program. Now that's a program that was established in 1929, and the California Department of Water Resources is the lead agency that oversees that program. We have a lot of partners that help make that happen. So the goal of the program is to really predict how much water we will have in the summer months when the snow begins to melt. And so of course, a number of you have probably heard of us mentioning the April 1st snow survey, even though we are out here for our February snow survey a little bit early because we were trying to get ahead of this storm as the snow is falling. And so we're trying to see what the snowpack will be like, because while we were above average in January, we've been basically dry for almost the entire month. And finally, we're getting some weather in that will hopefully add to our snowpack and help boost our snow numbers here up in the Sierras. So the snowpack turns out to be at least a third of California's water supplies when that snow melt begins to happen in the spring and summer months when we get warmer. And so that snow melt feeds into our rivers, into our reservoirs. It's used for agriculture, drinking water, as well as supporting nature. So DWR has conducted these manual snow surveys at Phillips Station since 1941, recording both snow depth and snow water content. Now the measurements taken here are factored into many other measurements happening throughout the state that gives us the average of how the snowpack is doing. And so as you can see, the team here, the snow survey team, they go to 6 different locations on this snow course, and they go to the 6 same exact locations, which is why they have that tape measure so they know exactly where they need to be. And then they take those 6 totals, average them out, compare them to previous numbers from previous years, previous months, and then we can see how we're doing with our snowpack so far for this year. And if you ever wondered about the snow tube that is being used, that was actually developed in the early 1900s by Dr. James Church, a professor of physics at the University of Nevada at Reno. And it was called the Mount Rose Sampler back then because Dr. Church would march up Mount Rose to take measurements, and the snow tube itself measures in inches to see how deep the snowpack is. And when the tube is weighed, it determines the density of the snowpack, so we know how much water is being stored in the snow. And when we take that number, that's how we can have a pretty good idea of what's in our snowpack when the snow begins to melt during those spring and summer months. So we will be bringing you those snow survey results, the numbers. So the team's out here doing their 6 different measurements at their 6 different locations. Then they'll bring those totals, bring those averages together, and then report it in about 15-20 minutes, and we'll be bringing you those snow survey results live. So that's what's going on right now. We'll leave you with some more live pictures of the snow survey, and we'll come back on to let you know how things are going. And welcome back if you are just joining us. This is the midst of the second snow survey of 2025, or the February snow survey for the California Department of Water Resources. So our snow survey team, led by Andy Rising, is making their way through the snow course, going to 6 different locations, driving the snow tube into the ground, pulling out a core of snow. One of the things to mention, though, is that because we have not gotten really any precipitation in the month of January, a lot of that snowpack has really condensed and packed down, and making it a little bit more challenging for the team to get the snow tube all the way to the ground so they can get a good core to sample for their measurements. And so for those wondering, Phillips Station and the snow surveys themselves, they're really vital in letting us know how our snowpack is doing leading up till that April 1st date. And so the snowpack itself is basically like a third of our water source when it comes to the spring and summer months, when we don't get any precipitation or any sort of rainfall. And the idea that we have this really robust snowpack in the Sierras, that when it begins to melt, and that it will run off into our reservoirs, into our rivers, where it can be used for agriculture, drinking water, as well as to support nature. Now, as we've seen this winter, we have gotten some extreme climate swings, or some extreme weather, going from really wet to really dry conditions. And so California water managers across the state rely on the data from these snow surveys to guide our state's water supply, as well as flood management and drought management decisions. So we're hoping that even though we've been dry in the month of January, that this storm will help build upon our snowpack. However, we haven't gotten any rain in January, so we're expecting the numbers to be a little bit lower or below average for the season. Or rather at this point in the season. So Phillips Station here, we have been measuring since about 1941. It's one of 260, more than 260 snow survey sites throughout California. Now, those snow survey sites can be done by manual, physical measurements like the one we're seeing right now with the team. There are also some electronic ones that are also sent, and those all get totaled together, and we can have a really good idea of what our snowpack is looking like. Now, traditionally, December through February, those are the key months when California receives most of its precipitation. So losing out on any sort of precipitation like we did for the month of January has put a significant dent in our water year so far. And when things like that happen, well, it means we need to see many more storms to make up for that deficit. So while we will be getting some weather up here, it's going to mainly stay in Northern California. The storms that are predicted today through the rest of the weekend, that's staying in Northern California. And really, while we've been seeing a lot of precipitation here in the northern part of the state, a little bit of the southern part of the Sierras has barely gotten any sort of precipitation whatsoever. So stick around. We will bring you the snow survey results after they've completed their measurements here, done their averages, done their totals, and let you know how we are doing so far in the state for our snowpack. We'll see you back here in a little bit.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at Phillips Station for DWR's second manual snow survey of the year. My name is Jason Entz. I'm an information officer with the California Department of Water Resources. In a moment, I'm going to be welcoming up Andy Rising, manager of DWR's Snow Surveys and Water Supply Forecasting Unit, to talk about today's results, and then we'll be taking some questions from the media. DWR has been doing manual surveys up here at Phillips Station since 1941, and today it's just one of over 260 snow courses that are manually measured every year by DWR and our partners with the California Cooperative Snow Surveys program. This data is critical for DWR to create accurate water supply forecasts so that water managers across the state can understand how much of the snow we see behind us will eventually be making its way into our reservoirs in the spring. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and welcome up Andy Rising. Andy?
Right on. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, greetings everyone. Happy snow day. So today's survey here at Phillips, we recorded a snow depth of 22.5 inches and a water content of 8 inches. And that represents 46% of average for this date, February 1st-ish, and then 33% of the April 1st average. And we reference the April 1st average frequently because that has typically been when the snowpack peaks in the Sierra Nevada and the mountains of California. So that's our kind of our target. So let me repeat those numbers. 22.5 inches of snow depth, 8 inches of water content, 46% of average for this date, 33% of the April 1st average. So based on this morning's data from our automated snow sensor network, the statewide snowpack stands at 65% of average, and also a 40% of April 1st average. And last month, right here, we measured 24 inches of depth and 9 inches of snow water content. So what we've seen over the last month, very dry conditions. The snowpack has consolidated a little bit, and a little bit has melted off or sublimated. So again, 9 inches, now we're at 8 inches. So essentially unchanged in this location. And then last year, early February, resulted in a depth of 29 inches and a snow water content of 10 inches. So not much different than last year, a little bit less than last year on this date. So we really had some good storms after that. We were chased out of here in March last year, so that's what happened. This year is a prime example of how much the conditions can change within a year. You know, we had good storms in November, December, built that snowpack to a statewide average of 108%. And then we had a dry January, which dropped our average all the way down to 65%. So as we can see, when we don't accumulate snow or rain, it definitely hurts our snowpack, and it requires us to catch up. The fundamentals of water and precipitation in California dictate that the most days that it doesn't rain or snow, we're losing, right? And that's what happened over the last month. And we certainly have seen the impacts of that in Southern California, right, with the extremely dry conditions that we know are down there. Today, the first of several wet storms come to the northern half of the state that will bring a week of significant precipitation and push this part of the state back up towards average or maybe above average. But like the storms in November and December, these coming storms will not bless Southern California with much precipitation at all. Coming from the tropics, these atmospheric river storms will be warmer, and the weather models are not unified on how much of the precipitation will fall as snow. We're seeing it right now, but it's expected to get warmer, some more rain. So we really don't know how much this next storm systems are going to be bringing to us. We'll have to remain and see what that will be. So we'll definitely need more storms throughout the next several months to make up for the very dry January experienced, and particularly in the central and southern part of the state. And so now I'd like to turn it back over to Jason. We'll handle some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. So now we'll be opening up for questions for the media here. So if anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for the time. First of all, Andy, just your overall thoughts as you as the expert here. How are you feeling about this? I know you said it seems right, but what goes through your mind about today's measurements?
Yeah, thank you. So the question overall, how are we feeling today? What are your thoughts about what we're seeing today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's, you know, we've had a very dry January, as I said, and it has hurt our snowpack by not adding to it. So we're behind the 8 ball throughout the state. An average I've got some numbers regionally. In the north, you know, we were well above 100% in the north. Now we're 89% of average for this date. 58% of average in the central, and 47% in the southern Sierra, right? And then beyond, even Southern California still dry as a bone. They got a couple inches last weekend, which helped to kind of wet it down a little bit there. But again, this is an atmospheric river that's focusing on the north, or the next 2 atmospheric rivers focusing mostly on the north. And the models aren't certain as to where we're going to see all of that precipitation. It may be just focused all in the north, or it may spread throughout some of the central. But and there's a lot of precipitation coming, but it's warmer. We don't know if it's going to add to the snowpack or if it's going to run off, now. Some of it will run off. We'll get some snow, but we just don't know how much. So in the north I'm feeling pretty good, but again, the central and south we're behind, and we need to have some more storms to catch up down there. Yeah.
And the snow in the north will be runoff. Does it run feed into the reservoirs along the way down?
Yeah, so let's go to the question about precipitation we do receive in the north. Where does that go? Does that run into our reservoirs right away, and how that precipitation comes down where it goes?
Yeah, I mean, the hydrology of our mountains definitely, all of anything that runs off will either go into the soil or into the streams that feed the rivers that feed the reservoirs. So our hope is that the soils are wet enough so that most of anything that runs off will run off into the rivers and fill our reservoirs. But there is some dryness in the soils. As again, with a dry January, some of the soils has dried out. And so that will take from some of the potential runoff. But everything that, on a really heavy storm like this, if it all falls as rain, some will freeze into the snowpack and add in that way, and some will hit the ground and run off into the rivers and reservoirs. But
Follow up on that. There's always, whether it goes into the soil here, it would probably benefit the trees, the forests, all of that. At least I would think. Could you tell us how seasons like this are going? I'm thinking specifically of fire season that we'll have in the summertime. Do you think this potentially may have a greater likelihood of fires in the mountains?
you want to recap the question? Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of a question about how this precipitation we're receiving, if it's going to benefit later in the year. Obviously, when it doesn't rain, we don't see precipitation, the environment dries out. What could that mean later in the year during the summer, potentially for fire season and whatnot?
Right. Yeah, so if this builds our snowpack, if this next week of storms, I mean, it's going to be a good 6, 7, 8 days of precipitation. If that builds our snowpack, that benefits us later in the year. If it doesn't build, it's going to run off sooner. It'll be received in the reservoirs, and then the folks who manage the reservoirs will have to optimize how that to protect from floods potentially, and then otherwise to optimize when they can fill their reservoirs. So with lower snowpack, it will melt typically earlier in the season, and then that allows the mountains to dry out earlier, and fire impacts could be every year we're seeing the chances of fire. Now that the climate's warming slowly, small degrees, but those small degrees make a very big difference in the conditions of the forests, and that's what we're seeing. So.
May I ask you one more question following up on climate and the long-term studies that you've been monitoring the snow and water levels for decades? How does it look? Are we consistently losing water per year? How is the climate change affecting our weather? Have you noticed a gradual evolution towards a new pattern?
Yeah, thank you. So the question about whether we're seeing an impact from climate change on the snowpack and how we're seeing the snowpack patterns over time shift.
Yeah, very good question. So, I'm not a climatologist. I'm an engineer, but listening to a lot of smart people, that there definitely is the trend of a slight decrease in areas, particularly the lower elevations of the mountains are getting less snowpack. The higher elevations haven't seen as much of an impact due to that. Snow still falls at higher elevations and stays as snow, but it's, overall it looks like it is impacting a very slight trend downwards as far as our annual snowpack, and that's expected to continue.
Because the thing about climate change is that it is a gradual thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and year to year we may get 2023 blizzards and super high snow again, and then we'll have drought years. It's just the way of California. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for anyone today?
You said the way of California. Is that typical 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago?
Oh, yes.
Pretty much dry climate, and that's why we're so sensitive as far as
Yeah, thank you. So a question about the California climate overall and kind of what we've been seeing.
Yeah, it's a similar answer to what I just. It has been drying out. So when I say that's the way of California, we do need to conserve. It is a Mediterranean climate, and with that knowledge that the snowpack's going to probably melt off earlier in the season, larger fire impacts, things like that.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there's no other questions today, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. We'll have our next snow survey at the beginning of March, so watch out for notifications on that. And everyone make sure to drive safe today. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.